All right. All right, guys. So, welcome back to another episode of the Soccer Performance Podcast. Today, we are joined by Abraham. I'm going to let Abraham Armas introduce himself. But we're sitting here. This is season 3, episode 1. I'm going to let Abe introduce himself. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, guys. So, man, like first and foremost, I really want to take this time to just like appreciate y'all for, what I'm saying, like having me on here. And man, I'll be honest, I've had a couple of like podcasts that reach out to me and say, hey, man, like let's, like do one. And for me, like I really like I'll speak with people or with like, I don't know, like organizations who I feel I connect with like the most. And I like y'all's content. So I was like, sure, man, what I'm saying? Like, why not?
Yeah, for sure. So, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, kind of like your come up as a coach, maybe as a player, or what your upbringing's been like.
Yeah, man. So I've been playing, like football, soccer my whole life, and I played in college, and then from there, I found the strength and conditioning world through one of my professors, and like long story short, I did like 2, 3 unpaid like internships, got some good jobs with some very well known like performance centers, and then COVID happened. I had to start my own business, so I was forced into it. So for me, that was a blessing in disguise. And yeah, man, like sure enough, I kind of just started growing my social media, and then I started getting some recognition. I started getting clients like club work. And now I work with athletes from all ages, from like 6, 7 years old up to the professional level.
Can you just for the listeners, can you just briefly let us know where you are, where you're located, and kind of where you went to school and stuff like that?
Yeah. So I'm located in Dallas, Texas. But my actual home is Fort Worth. Like I live in Fort Worth, but I say Dallas because everybody knows where Dallas is at. And man, I went to Texas Wesleyan, and that's where I played soccer here in Fort Worth. I actually ended up graduating though because I transferred to West Texas A&M, where I got my bachelor's, and then I got my master's at Texas A&M Corpus Christi.
Nice. And what did you study?
Kinesiology, strength and conditioning. Like that's what I mastered in.
Nice, nice. Very nice. Yeah, so Mario and I have been chatting with a lot of call them, I guess, professional coaches, professional trainers. And not to say that we're not, but coaches that have been involved in professional academies. And
Yeah.
it's a nice perspective, right? Obviously, it gives us a point of view that the day to day is not what we're exposed to. But we came across you, and you kind of fit, a similar profile to what we're doing. So, we want to start off the conversation by chatting about age appropriate training, right? We noticed that you do a lot of work like us with very low training age athletes, all the way up to, collegiate or professional level players. So we wanted to know kind of how you go about structuring your training so that it's appropriate to the demographic you're working with.
Yeah, so I just kind of start off. There was this like research paper or article, like if you will, that I first read, and it was just like how to train like the youth athlete. And during different stages of their life, there's a certain training stimulus that like you should focus on, right? And during a certain age, that's where they're going to receive like the most like benefits, right? So we call these windows of opportunity. So let's start off with between the ages of 6 to 9 years old. That's where the body is craving, and it's a sponge to really maximize that genetic potential as far as power and speed is concerned, right? So we'll do more focus on like jumping, on like sprint training, right? Like things like that. And once they start getting into that like pre-puberty age around 12 to 14 years old, then we start transitioning more onto strength, like max strength work, where we got to get them in the weight room. We got to get them strong, right? Because that's what's going to really drive up that central nervous system. Now, of course, right, like these are spectrums, like we're still doing a little bit of everything, but there's a focus, right? And like there's going to be a higher focus of strength for like one end, and then a higher focus of like power and speed on one end. But also, like that's like the general scope. And then within that, now you got to look at the individual or the team that you're training in. And then based on that, now we got to give them what they're not getting enough of in the game, or maybe like where they're lacking in. And
Right.
then in the professional level, um, or even at the higher level, man, though, like that's where we see the most compensations, because a lot of those guys also, like guys and girls, they have a very low training age or haven't been exposed to the right amount of training. And then so we, not that we got to start them from scratch, but we still got to build a good foundation now, like kind of reduce like asymmetries on like the single leg power and strength and like stuff like that.
For sure. Mayor, what do you
I
think
think
about?
you make yeah, no, I think there's very good points. You and I have spoke about that previously, where when there's like a physical development curriculum, training age does not necessarily mean their biological age, right? So as Abe was kind of touching there, some older guys, they might have a very low training age because they haven't done structured strength and conditioning before. And I think he hits that make a very good point there, because there might be some 18-year-olds who haven't done a proper strength and conditioning programs, haven't hit those windows of opportunity coming up, and then now they think, oh, they're seeing like kind of what the pros are doing, and then they think they're ready for that, but that's not the case. um so Abe, when you get that older player, they're probably lacking that strength that they should have been developing at 15, let's say. You know what I mean? Is that do you find that a challenge? Like, okay, no, I'm sorry, buddy, we gotta like dial it back a little bit. You want to get faster, but actually doing the strength work will get you faster, even though it doesn't even look like it right now. If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
No, yeah, it does. Man, I'll be honest, like I don't get necessarily pushback in that sense. It's just like I'll tell you right now, like I'm working with an American player that plays in Iceland. And we were doing like I was doing an assessment, and one of the biggest things I noticed was well, her strength wasn't, like, it just wasn't there. And then she was like, yeah, like we lifted in college, but I didn't really lift. Like, you know how it is, right? Like you're kind of thrown like in the weight room, and like maybe as a soccer player, you just kind of do like the bare minimum, or you don't really care for it. And then it's not until you get in these later ages where you finally realize, oh shoot, I should have been doing it. But um no. Like sometimes like we just gotta like say, hey, look, exactly like you said, we got to do more max strength, because that's the bucket that's least filled. And once we increase your strength, your capacity and everything else is going to improve. And like sure enough, once we kind of get them in these like or 6 to 8 week like ranges of continuous training, that's when they really start noticing like wow, like I feel so good, I feel so strong, I feel fast, explosive, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I think it just comes back down to the buy-in, right? That you're able to generate, which is, I mean, and it's how we got your attention. It's how I guess you were able to capture ours. And that's kind of something that is difficult. And Mario and I talk about that. How do you create that buy-in, right? There's so much, in our case, content. There's so many trainers. Everybody now that maybe finishes playing is attempting to pursue now that hybrid between like strength training and technical training, or some sort of blend of both. And it's why I asked you, what your background is, because I think a lot of players don't necessarily know how to differentiate between what's quality and what isn't, right? So you post a lot, and I like how you post your stuff. But I think I kind of want to get your approach towards your social media content. How do you keep it relevant and very, call it, very viral, because you
Mm.
post a lot of good stuff, but how do you also balance so that what you're posting is not very gimmicky, and it's not just clickbait type of stuff?
Yeah, man. It's been a process of like evolving and really just looking into, like, I'll be honest, like the biggest thing that has helped me out is just looking at the production behind like these videos. And like what I mean by that is like as simple as, let's look at first of like who's trending, right? So I think like the most recent video was Mudrick, like from Chelsea, right? Like it went viral that he hit, or like he set the record for the EPL, like something like that. And I
Yeah,
look at these
right.
things and yeah. So like I look at these things and be like, man, like that's a good, like attention grabber. So I get that, and then I apply it. And dude, I'll be honest, like a lot of times, like what I'm talking about, because I go through phases of like what I want to talk about. A lot of times it just ends up like mixing well, right? It's just like coincidentally, but like just making sure that the production, like I said, like behind the video is good, from adding subtitles to even getting a better camera. I feel like once I started doing that, like in these past like 2-3 weeks, I've hit videos that have range up to like 600,000-700,000 views. And now like I'm seeing that kind of like that continuous, what is it, like it's being consistent now. And again, just looking at like what's trending, understanding that, like what's trending, and like understanding, well, the game itself, right? Because something I like to emphasize is that like I'm a performance coach. We're performance coaches, so we're obviously just gonna look at the physical stuff. But for whatever reason, I find myself having to say, "Hey, look, speed isn't everything," because you still got to be good at the game. And but yeah, man, again, just look at what's trending, like understand like what these players want, and then just kind of go from there.
You do a really good job at actually posting like valuable content. That's where I was going, right? A lot of people can go viral on a training video. And to the eye of a young player, maybe who can't differentiate between what's good and what's not. That captures their attention. But Mario and I talk about that, and it's difficult for a player to navigate Instagram, TikTok, or whatever social platform and say, okay, should I listen to you? Should I listen to somebody else? So I don't know, Mayor. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so to add to your point there, Juan. So obviously athletes are going to be watching videos of guys training, and unfortunately, a lot of pros, like the videos you might see of their training, is not something you should be replicating, or it might just be some fluff. It's not that good. But Abe posted that Mudrik video, and it was actually very high quality training, and I thought that was a great post, and he was highlighting that. I think these posts are important, kind of reviewing these posts, because I'm not going to name players, but there's some well-known players, they'll post something and it's really, I mean, we're not there, it's going to be hard to judge, like we're not there, why, but like if a player might confuse that as performance training that they need to do, but really it's the fundamentals they need to do. And going back to what Abe was saying, that those windows of opportunity, that kind of physical development curriculum, following that is what they need, not just copying. But I think it's a great educational tool. So it is a tough one. At the same time, so Abe posts good stuff like with that. But at the same time, I've noticed you get some negativity in the comments. So often, and I think that has a lot to do with the soccer culture and I guess knowledge around gym work and soccer culture. So it might look like, we point out that, oh, this is good strength and power work, which would make the athlete more explosive, which would make them more injury resilient and perhaps make them faster in the game. But people might see that, and for whatever reason, usually it's knowledge and education, they think, oh, that's going to make them slow. That's going to ruin a soccer player. How do you deal with that, Abe, and have that conversation with those people?
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Sometimes I don't even know how I do it. Like to start off, like I feel like I do with it very well now. And for a while, I actually avoided even posting on TikTok just because that's all I got. And then I got to a point where I was like, man, I really don't care, because like it's engagement. But like with those people, honestly, like there's nothing that you can do, right? Like I find it so pointless arguing on social media, and like I think 99% of the times, like I just ignore it because again, it's somebody who's just speaking, man, like out of their ass, and and like don't know like what they're talking about, like a lot of times. And also just, people are just so reactive sometimes and don't take the time to understand what my page is about, or what's the context behind it. So again, like to be honest, I just kind of ignore it and I just keep it pushing, because I think that's going to be probably like the 2-3% that watch your videos, right? I think most, no, I know for a fact most are actually enjoying the content and accept it. It's just that little small percentage that want to just express their opinion because they probably don't feel good about themselves, or for whatever reason, right? Like people just like to post like negative stuff, and that's the reality of like social media. So yeah.
I think, and I mean, if anything, like you said, I think you got to call it a negative into a positive, because I mean, and I haven't had, you have a like a formula for viral videos that generate a lot of discussion back and forth. Um, and I think that's good. I mean, anybody, if I'm looking at your comments, I want to see how you respond to these comments, right? Like that's your opportunity as a trainer or as a coach to expose yourself, right? Like how you handle those things. If those comments aren't there, then you don't really have that opportunity. I guarantee you from those type of, let's call them negative comments, the way that you respond, someone else might see that and now be like, you know what, this guy's credible. And I think that's where I think that you do a good job, that it's digestible to a young athlete, right? The content is digestible to a young athlete, but a trainer who is at a high level or has been doing it for a while can also be like, yeah, this guy understands training principles, right? Because like you were saying, like the it's a Mudrik. I don't want to butcher it and make it sound like Modric. This mayor's gonna get mad. Mudrik, right?
Modric, like something like that. Yeah, something like that.
The
But
Ukrainian Modric.
he's doing some compound lifts. He's doing some single leg lifts. He's not doing like any sort of machine work, right? And so I think it's like it's how do you create the video, right? But maintain the integrity to post proper content, right? That's training that is following a training principle. And Mayor's right. I don't want to name names, but you go especially in the off season, right? But even sometimes when they're in the clubhouse itself, and the stuff that's going viral, right, is to the naked eye, maybe it's impressive, I guess, but it's creating so much confusion in young players, right? Because it's like, well, if so and so is doing it, then perhaps so should I, you know? It's tough. But I want to take it back to age appropriate training. What would you say are your guidelines for that? How do you navigate moving a player from, let's say, this training age to the next? How do you know when they're ready to move on, and how do you let them know that?
Yeah, so just kind of based on what I said, just looking at the individual, like a lot of times I think we have we have the experience and the coaching eye, if you will, like to know, oh, hey, it's time to like level them up. And I think it just happens gradually, right? I've had the opportunity, and at first I think we all start off wanting to train just pro athletes, but man, I have found so much value starting athletes like from a very young age, untrained, and so much room to grow, like at 10 years old. And then we just gradually start like making them more springy and powerful and stronger. And then as they get older, up to 12, like 13, like I've had them for 2-3 years, and I'm like, wow, we've come so far, because I have videos and it just kind of happens naturally by looking at, oh, hey, look, like we're getting stronger, like they're moving. And it can even happen in a session, right? Like as simple as this. Let's say I'm having them do like a single leg lateral hop on a cone, right? So from that left leg onto that same left leg, and I have them stick the landing, and then like in like 3 months time, now we're going over a like 6-inch like hurdle, right? So as simple as that, because I see now they're able to get up higher, now they're able like to stabilize, and then maybe like in the next like 2 years, now we're going over a 12-inch hurdle, right? So again, it just kind of happens like naturally, and a lot of the progression happens within a session. And I always like to say, the program I make for my athletes is not something I'm going to follow 100%, right? And this is what I always tell all my athletes: your program is a guide. It's a guide like to go off of. Yeah, like follow it as much as you need to, but where needed, modify it. Because I find myself sometimes I need to progress an athlete. Sometimes I need to regress an athlete for a certain movement, right? So just kind of going off of that, I feel like when you do that, that's when you're really able to get the most out of the athlete, because you're giving them exactly what they need.
Definitely.
I think that's really important. I think all good coaches are able to pause, recognize that what they put on the paper is kind of irrelevant based on what they see, and they're ready to throw that paper out. And like I've learned from coaches that, and I've had to just, kind of pull sessions out of nowhere and just be like, okay, well, he's not ready for what's on this paper. We got to do this instead. But perhaps in 2 phases, 2 blocks of training, he'll be ready for this then. I think that's important, especially when, because I've gotten, and I'm sure you've probably got way more messages and DMs. I think would be like, what do you think of this program? Should I do this? And I'm just like, well, I don't know you. I don't know how you move. I don't know how strong you are. I like, it just says sprint, do 3 sprints and do this. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like I know it's not that available training. It's not in everyone's budget and stuff, but if youth athletes at home can, or parents at home listening to this can, having someone assess your child and, you know, giving them that individualized work and age appropriate training is so important. For example, in the fall, I was working with an under 10 team, and I remember just, you know, it was very basic, going over fundamentals of movement, speed, agility. Very, very good for that age group. And I remember just thinking, damn, I wish I had this when I was 10. Because
Yeah.
we were just running laps or doing whatever nonsense. And I'm there thinking, okay, if they do this for a year, 2 years, this basic work, how much better off are they going to be when they're 12? And whoever coach takes over, they're going to have such a good foundation of movement with these kids, and they'll be able to do such great work with them because all that earlier work is done. I just think it's such an important thing to get those things done early. And I guess what I'm trying to bring it back to is that age appropriate training is so important. And any parents that might be listening to this, definitely an investment worth doing. And yeah, I don't know, Abe, maybe you have, or Juan, you have something to add to that.
I think, like you said, I think people don't realize, and I'll ask Abe how things are, you know, where um, in Dallas. But here, people need to understand that it's an investment, right? Like, unless you're able to get your son or daughter into a professional academy where at least the training is going to be professional, then you have to invest in good training, right? Like Mayor's saying, yeah, I think in general, um, if you're going to look at something online, it's a general program, right? I think every trainer can agree that the best case scenario is one-on-one coaching. It's where you're going to get the most um, progression and the most advancement. Um, I think if you're able to understand that it's a window of opportunity, like Abe was saying, then you understand that it's an investment, like anything. It's a short time that you don't get back. And if you don't do that at that point in time, then it's just like anything, you create an unstable product, right? So how are things? I mean, how do you approach dealing with that, Abe? Because I mean, we're like that. We're working with the players that are playing for community clubs. We're working for players that are going out of their own to kind of create this training structure. So take us through kind of like your day to day or your week. How do things operate where you're from?
Like just as far as what I'm sorry.
In terms of how how you go about getting players, creating their schedule. How is
Oh,
how is the season in relation to the Dallas soccer community? Here
I
we operate
understand.
around, call it the
Mm,
Toronto schedule or the Ontario schedule. And we operate around the community clubs, right? Most of our clientele is going to be based in those clubs, right? Just because the
yeah,
professional players are usually on a day-to-day regimen, right? A lot of the players that we're getting are trying to compensate. They're going with their teams 3 times a week, and now they got
hmm
2 days a week, right? And that's where we come in.
hmm
I'm assuming you guys follow a similar structure, but if you can give us more insight on that, that'd
yeah,
be
yeah, man, definitely, yeah, yes. So kind of like you guys, right? Like we have, right, like in season starts around September, and then around November, that's when kind of like the season takes a break because high school season starts, right? So the first half of club training, I'm saying, like that's all over, like for the first part, and then high school starts, right? So they're always in season, right? And then around let's say March, April, that's when the second half of the season starts, and then we have nationals, blah blah, and then it's June, and then we really only have like 2-3 months like to really get some off-season work. But so throughout that time, um, yeah, just giving them enough and giving them what they're not getting in training, right? Like I have some teams right now, who are in the off season. So I'm lucky that they're not playing in high school, right? I'm very lucky, and we're able to put in a lot of good work. But whenever we get into like the in season, we got to lower the reps. We got to, give them like a little bit less taxing things, and maybe just get them a certain type of sprints, like reduce a change of directional stuff, or maybe just work on deceleration and, just kind of looking at I forget the terms, the mesocycle or like the macrocycle, and then down to the microcycle being like on a week to week basis on, hey, did they have a match this week? Oh no, they didn't. I bet like this week is going to be like a higher load because their next match isn't until another like 5 days from now.
Right. And
Right. So
you mentioned youth athletes are always in season, right? I think we can all agree on that.
mhm.
So
Before that, sorry, Abe, did you say that halfway through the club season they'll pause to allow the high school season to go?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, man, that's how it
Wow.
is here.
but it's a
Juan,
short high school season.
can you imagine they were intelligent enough to do that here? I mean, I guess
Sports there,
sports is a
right?
lot more important or a lot bigger in the States, but
Maybe so. Like, yeah. Like, I wish I had like more info on that. Like, that would be with probably like a high school or like a club, right? Like soccer coach who could really like dive into that. But yeah, like that's really like all I know. Like based on, because I work with a lot of coaches like very close and who have connections with high school coaches, like college coaches and stuff. And that's kind of like what it looks like. But during that time is like, can we at least get one strength and conditioning session in, right? To me, that's very important because I want to at least not necessarily maintain, but also like maintain, if you will.
For sure.
hmm yeah.
I
No,
think,
it's interesting, and I brought that up earlier because like Juan, in high school here, you'll have your high school season and club season kind of go
right.
simultaneously. And I remember back in the day, we loved that. We're just like, oh, unlimited soccer. You finish school, you go to soccer training for your school, you go home, you eat, and then you go to your club training. But actually, that's looking now, that's actually not good at all. And I remember like
Yeah.
coaches would hate it because players would get injured, they were tired, and then
Hmm.
like just saying more does not necessarily mean better. And I remember I pulled my hamstring in a in a school tournament, and then that was like my first month of my club season gone. So it's nonsense. So I guess I was just bringing it up. Like I really like how that is, and I think that in Canada we're so behind with that scheduling. Like the scheduling here is so not optimal for development and performance when it comes to soccer. Like it's actually shocking, and I feel like that just leads to more injuries. And then, if anything, it highlights more importance towards strength and conditioning so they are prepared to handle that volume. Because a lot of the time, like we talk about strength, power, speed, but sometimes all like the most important thing you do is keep them strong so that they can handle enough training and be healthy and play, right?
Well, that's what I think. When my point was going towards that. When how do you train somebody who's always in season, who has something to look forward to in terms of competition every week? And I think, like Mario was saying, if if you take an approach that's focused on quality, here it's just like games, tournament, right? And I think there's a misconception that you're improving as a player just by playing, right? And like you said, if you have such poor movement habits, just by playing soccer, you're not going to develop, you know, those habits, right? You obviously you become a better player playing, but you have to make time for training, right? And I think, like I said, with the exception of academy players that are already in a professional academy, players have to take it upon themselves to find ideally coaches, trainers, or like Mario was saying, if you don't have that access, if it's not within your budget or your schedule availability, then just finding valuable people through social media that can help you
Yeah.
balance, right, and compensate. Because I think we can agree, and we talked about it in many episodes from different coaches in different clubs, and everybody is treating these young players like professionals, right? They're in every day. They're doing they're age appropriate training, right? They're doing age appropriate strength and conditioning, age appropriate technical work, and so on. And so I think that's where we come in, right? What is your I wanted to ask you, what is your friction or maybe lack of friction with community clubs? Do they support you? Do they kind of make it difficult for you? Sometimes here there's a culture of kind of like, this is my player. I don't want any other trainer, any other private trainer to take my player because it's gonna, he's gonna teach him something else or he's gonna expose some things, right? And it's like, oh, don't do this that you learned at so and so. What's the culture like for you?
Yeah, I think now more than ever before, like it's being accepted. Hey, like strength and conditioning is needed, and no, like I feel like I've just been very like lucky, like to be around like such like good like people and coaches who like they'll even like come up to me and be like, hey, like my player's not as strong, like it's not as fast, like we got to get them like through these things. I don't think I've ever had a coach like say like anything like negative about me. I'm sure it happens, right? But no, I think like I think strength and conditioning here is growing very fast because of social media, because we're seeing like what these like pros are doing. And
Right.
so there are a lot of positives like from social media, right? Now we just got to get them like the right type of training. But yeah, again, I think like things are growing and I think like to me, it's just exciting to see where it's going to be at like in the next like 10, 15 years.
For sure. I think the game is getting so physical and like you said, it's inevitable, right? People are seeing it and you're right. It's a mixture of players are seeing like, oh snap, so and so is doing this type of gym work. Okay, I gotta get in. And it's good, it's beneficial. But the problem is with strength training specifically, you can do more harm than good, right? If you're following the wrong things.
Yeah.
So, I think that kind of allows us to conclude the conversation with that. I think hopefully, if you're a young player listening, you're taking it upon yourself to dig deep, to really look at the people that you're following, the content you're consuming, and making sure that if you're going to replicate that, that you're following somebody who's credible, who is going to guide you, and that's I think what we're trying to do over here, and I'm sure you're doing the same. If people are trying to find you, where can they look at your content? What are your handles?
Yeah. So just like starting off on YouTube, just look up Arma Strength and Conditioning. You'll find me there. On TikTok, Arma Strength DFW. On Instagram, Arma Strength DFW, and I have my email on there as well on my Instagram.
Awesome. Mayor, any closing remarks, closing points?
No, I think this was good. We highlighted a range of topics. I think there was some useful things for players at home to take, right? Understanding what you need for your age and also training age. So to summarize, if you're 16, but you haven't done any of that gym work before, okay, your strength program may look a lot more like the under 14s program. Nothing wrong with that. Stick to what you need. And actually, because of, you're further through puberty, you'll probably get stronger faster than the 14-year-old would, right? So
Mhm.
nothing stressful there. And once again, look up Abe's page. We were talking about good reviews of good players training. I think it'll be very educational for them. I think to summarize, we touched on a lot of good stuff. So yeah, Abe, thanks for coming on. And we might have to talk again and have more, and we can see what other topics that people might be interested in.
Yeah, for sure, guys. Yeah, guys, I definitely, guys. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, like if you guys want to, what I'm saying, I do this again, I'll be happy to come on. I love having these conversations and like meeting like new people, and like I love what you guys are doing as well. Like I said, I wouldn't have gone on like if I didn't like what I did. So again, guys, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. All right, boys. Until the next episode. Thanks to everybody for listening and tune in to the next one.
Cool. See you guys.
All right, guys, take it easy.
Take care, boys.